Hey Zen fam. So, me and a couple of my pals the other day, we were talking about the passage of time as a gamer, as you've heard me do so a couple of times on this channel before. And one thing struck me about said passage of time. The fact that I'm a father and that I've been gaming for so long, and that my kid, who is going to be 15 later this year, has also been gaming for a good long time now. I got him started on DuckTales. Raise him right. And yeah, I didn't start him on the easy stuff. No. Deep end. Nah, but seriously. And I've done discussions with him before, like the video I did a couple of years back where when he was 13 we discussed what it's like for him as a gamer as what it was like for me as a gamer at that point, and how we both look at gaming and how we both see gaming from our different standpoints of age and experience and the technology that we've both had available at that point and the technology I'd had available to me at his point. And it was a good discussion. I'll try and remember to link it at the end of the video and stuff. Anyway, one of the things that I noticed recently is just this week we hit the 15th birthday of Infamous. Now, Infamous is something I've discussed quite a lot on social media, but it dawned on me I've never really truly discussed Infamous here. So I'd like to discuss that with you, obviously. Otherwise, what's this video about? So, Infamous is one of those games that I have truly loved. The series, the entire series, I've really had a lot of fun with it and found the story to be engaging. I've loved the mechanics. And the thing that gets me about it is Sony these last few years has been so hell-bent on remakes, remasterings, reissuings, never mind just on PlayStation but also to PC, which is a good thing because that means more people get to play PlayStation games, more money comes to PlayStation Studios, and therefore there's more money for development for future games. All's good there. But for some mad reason, Infamous has never really seen much more development, much more love given to it. I mean, yes, we could go on forever and a day about the games that Sony's left on the back burner and never touched again. I mean, we could talk about MAG, we could talk about Modern Nation Racers, we could talk about Bloodborne. I mean, you could really just go on and on and on. Sly Cooper. But I'm not going to litigate all these games because I liked, owned and played all the Infamous games. The first one, the second one. I also really liked Infamous Second Son, and I really quite liked First Light. I thought those were all excellent characters. In fact, if anything, I actually preferred the protagonist of First Light to the protagonist of Second Son. Now, don't get me wrong, Delsin Rowe was a lot of fun to play, but the guy was an arrogant, self-centered, not a great character to play. Similar in terms, when you think of it, is a flawed character as when I spoke previously about Aiden Pierce in my recent Watch Dogs video. But still, eminently playable and super enjoyable world to be in. And the one thing I've said over and over and over again on my years on social media, whenever it's come up, and it comes up quite a lot, is people go, I miss Infamous, I want Infamous back. And my retort is always, yeah, me too. Because what I would dearly love to see is they take Infamous 1, they take Infamous 2, they bash them together as one game. One big massive game. You start in Empire City, you move to New Marais, you have the same story, the same characters. That's important. Keep the core tenets of the game the same. Obviously you update things like facial capture and motion capture. You definitely do things like update lighting and textures and NPC movements and how they react in the world to the situations of the world and to your character. You definitely you bring up a new forms of mission structuring that have come about in the last few years, because we've moved a lot in 15 years of how games are made, molded, and how the narrative is pushed forward. So the story of Infamous, I'm fine with. That's great. In fact, I'm ready to experience that story again, because, well, it's been a decade and a half. But what I really want to see is an Infamous game that is playable by a modern audience, that is understandable by a modern audience, and that works with modern controls and modern ideas of where games are now. So I would actually say if Infamous was to come back as a 2-in-1, up-resed, remastered, remade, uber version of itself in a 2020s setting, really just take it to the zenith of what it could be now, rather than a recreation of what it was then we'd really have something. And I think that Infamous, brought into the modern times with all the good stuff that we have now, could really be something quite special. And if anything, you might even be able to retcon the ending, thus allowing for Cole to come back for an Infamous 3 or 4, depending if whether or not you want to count Infamous Second Son as the third Infamous game, or even since it's a reboot, you could just say that is Infamous 1, and then Infamous 2 would be Cole's return. But that's all up in the air. What I really like the idea of, though, is these last few years the superhero genre has kind of taken a bit of a beating because it's become a bit predictable and a bit stale. And what I loved most of all about Infamous in all its iterations was it wasn't predictable. I mean, yes, you knew the good guy was going to win, but the fact that like Infamous had that whole good play, bad play back then, that was a clever concept, that was a new concept that gave a way for the narrative to not only be experienced differently, but experienced twice. Because you could play the story once as the good version and get different powers for being a good guy, or you could play the games as a bad guy and get different powers for being the bad guy. And that's been the the flow between Infamous 1 and 2, and also in Infamous Second Son. I don't think that was so much the case in First Light, but then First Light was more of an add-on. Although it felt like its own game, even though it used the exact same world map as a Second Son had. So, in wrapping this up and gathering all the bits together, I think it's high time that Cole comes back and that it becomes a bigger, more immersive, better version of itself. It truly is a game that, like, you can make changes without destroying the fan base. You can have flexibility and you could actually play with it. Although there is one debate to be had if Infamous can come back, and by the way should come back, is do we still keep Cole with a buzz cut, or do we let the man have some hair? Because there was that period of time that Infamous existed in when so many video games were out there And it is basically a dude in his late 20s, early 30s, with a gruff voice and a buzz cut. There was a lot of that. That was very much in that brown era of games, when everything was browns and greens and greys. Very drab, depressing worlds that most games were in, where they were trying to have these realistic, gritty colour palettes. So it'd be interesting to see if the palette changes in a new version of New Marais and a new version of Empire City. I think it would definitely be worthwhile, and the fan base is there, the demand is there. And although we technically want new IP and new experiences, if Sony is so hell-bent on using older IP, then use older IP that has never really met its full potential. Because as good as Infamous was, we always knew deep down it could be better. In fact, when you consider it, when Infamous was released, it was more or less ignored. Nobody really cared that much about Infamous. It was kind of, oh yeah, there's that superhero game. That looks kind of interesting. I'll get round to it at some point. But you know what made Infamous sell? You know what made Infamous popular? The PSN crash. The PSN crash happened, and when everybody finally got their accounts back, Sony basically put out this announcement going, look, dude, guys, we're sorry. Please, we're sorry. Don't abandon us. Look, cause all this happened, we're going to give you some games. For free. They're yours forever. Don't worry about it. And you can choose. We've got a bunch of games, and you can have a certain number of this pack of games. You don't have to have all of them. You can only have one if you want. But they're basically, you can't have all of them. But you can have, I think it was like 3 of them, perhaps. I think it was. That's a long time ago. But basically, there was a sorry package of like, here's some free games, and among them was Infamous. And so many people downloaded Infamous and fell in love with Infamous. That's why we got Infamous 2 and Infamous Second Son, and obviously First Light. So building on that legacy would not be a bad move in Zenbloke's opinion. But obviously your opinion is also very important. So typey down below, let Zenbloke know what you think. And hashtag support Scottish YouTubers, and of course, as always, aye, nae bother.